Hello. So we've got a few speakers today. We'll give a bit of an introduction to everyone as we go through the slide, a bit of a presentation. I think I'll go ahead and make a start. Got that lovely front page, moving to Spain, 21st of October. Oh, how the year has flown. I'll give a brief introduction to myself and the company. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Remy Har. I'll be your host today. I'm from the UK myself and generally specialize in dealing with British expats moving to France and Spain. I am based out of the Spanish office. We have a office here down on the south coast of Spain, currently in the middle of moving office, which is a bit of a headache. Um, the list sort of goes on. A bit about Holborn assets. Well, guys, some housekeeping before I start, and I always forget this part. There is a Q&A button that you'll see on the panel there on your screens. This is a live Q&A, so feel free to put any questions in you have throughout the webinar, whatever may be personal or something you're unsure of, or perhaps something that we talk about that triggers a question. Feel free to put it into the chat box, and we'll try and cover off as many as we can at the end. So going back to Holborn Assets, we are one of the largest wealth management firms globally. We operate in 150 countries worldwide. We've got myself and Jacob here today representing Holborn. Jacob has just left me in the Spanish office. I wouldn't say all by myself, but he's moved over to Valencia with his wife, and he's from the US himself. I think most important points for a company perspective when giving and receiving financial advice is that we are licensed and regulated. I could tell you all the wonderful numbers about Holborn and all the reasons I work for Holborn Assets, but they're a long-established, well-reputable company that gives sound advice. Look, do your own due diligence on us. Look at the website. Look at our reviews. That's pretty much it on the company. Why choose Spain? And then Lexity, we have Monica and Maria here from the immigration and tax departments, respectively. Lexity are a significantly large, reputable company, deal across mainland Europe and can really help in quite a few areas, which we'll touch on. So why choose Spain? I think that's quite a stupid slide, to be honest with you, but there's a lot going on, especially in the UK and the US, and we're seeing quite an influx of people making the move or talking to us about the move. So yeah, it's October the 21st, and I think it was 24 degrees down here on the south coast. That's enough of a reason, I think, for most. We're not estate agents, none of us. We can certainly point you in the right direction. I'm based in Malaga, Jacob in Valencia, and we can't tell you where to move or what to do, but we can certainly help. We've combined between us all with getting you into the country, helping you from a tax point of view, and then setting you up in the best way possible financially. So we're going to fly through this, guys, and as I said, make use of that question and answers tab because we'll touch on that at the end. But we'll start with visas because it's first and foremost a great starting point. How do you get into the country? How do you stay for the medium to long term? Monica, do you want to give a brief sort of introduction to who you are, Lexity perhaps, and a bit of an insight into the options available?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Monica, and I'm the head of immigration department here in Spain. And I've been working for Lexity for 7 years already. And so my department is based in Barcelona, Madrid, and Malaga as well. But we assist people that wants to move to Spain, any region of Spain. And we help them from the beginning till the end of the process, assisting them in knowing what is the best way to proceed with the relocation process, from giving them the list of documents, reviewing the documents, answering any questions that they have about the process. Then if it's possible to apply from Spain, we would submit the application on their behalf. If not, we will instruct them how to do it at the consulate. And then finally, when you come to Spain, assisting you to get the final steps of the process by getting your ID cards. We also assist with renewals. And finally, also, if you are eligible for citizenship, we would also also be able to assist you with the citizenship process. In order to decide what's the best option for you to relocate to Spain, I would say that the most popular options for people to come here would be the non-lucrative visa, which is addressed to those that are basically retired or that have enough economic means without the need of working at all, so that they take a sabbatical leave or that they don't work at all, and they decide to spend, the following years in Spain, enjoying of the culture, the temperature, the climate, and everything. So I would say that this would be the best option for this kind of people if you are planning to work from Spain. In this case, the other popular option would be the digital nomad visa, who is addressed to employees and self-employed that are planning to work remotely for companies. It is very important to know that digital nomad only applies to those that work remotely and for companies. If you are independent contractors and have individual clients, this will not apply to you. So we would need to check if maybe the self-employment freelance visa would be an option if you're planning to do your business from Spain and maybe have some clients also from Spain. Also, if you receive a job offer from Spain, from a Spanish company, we would also be able to see what are the options to come to Spain and get a work visa or a work permit here. The most popular one here would be the highly qualified professional visa, because in this case, as long as you have the professional qualification or you have a university title related to the job that you're going to be hired for, you would be entitled to apply for that. The regular work visa is not as easy as a highly qualified one, but in any case, if you find yourself in this situation, you can contact us and we will be able to assist you and see what's the best way to move forward and to move to Spain. The student visa is addressed to those that wants to study in Spain. It's also a popular option, especially for young people that wants to start studying in Spain. Regulations have changed recently, so it's very important that if you wish to come to Spain and study and then establish a residency here, that you choose to come to study like a university master's program, because this would give you the option to convert the student visa into a work permit. Language courses would not give you that option. So, well, just as I mentioned, if you're planning to do that, you can contact us and with all the information that you have or all your needs, and we will be able to assess your situation and give you the best options to relocate to Spain.
Monica, I haven't spoke to you for a few months, and I forgot how knowledgeable you are on this section. But that's why you're head of immigration department for the Spanish office. So, from my experience, most common visas are the non-lucrative visa and the digital nomad visa. Generally, no
That's
work
correct.
or work. The starting point or process for you would be to have a important word here: free webinar, free consultation with a potential client to see what visa, what route would be best for them. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, as long as they provide us with enough information about the situation, what are their plans, we will be able to offer them a free consultation in order to give them an assessment of what's the best route to move forward.
Okay, well, perfect. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a slide on some contact details. I'll follow up the webinar with any registrations to a link to Lexity, and similarly with the tax side of things, you can simply fill out an inquiry form with more specific details about your personal situation, what you want and what you hope to achieve, and the team at Lexity will certainly get back to you. Thank you, Monica. That's really useful.
Thank you.
We'll touch on tax and residency. I think the timing of this webinar is certainly specific and certainly something to be mindful of as far as when you may plan to move to Spain. I'll pass it over to Maria if you want to give a bit of an introduction to yourself and insight into what people should be thinking of.
Hi to all of you. My name is Maria and I'm the head of Tax and Global Mobility Department at Lexity. I have more than 10 years of experience with tax advice, and the main clients that we had, it's usually people who move to Spain and or in advance or after wants to know about tax planning, which tax obligations they have in Spain, and how, for example, we can assist them in order to make potential tax optimizations if possible. Okay, here of course, and I always recommend to in advance if possible contact us to review your case before your move, because it's true that it's easier to make some of the advice, I would say some of the, like you potential advice to reduce the tax liability before your arrival. It's true that most of them, I would say, also if they, for example, do not want which kind of region they want to move, we also recommend some regions because it's not the same in the whole country. Depending on the autonomous community, you have more, I would say, tax advantages and benefits than others. So, of course, we want to provide to all of our clients all the opportunities, I would say, in advance. Based on that, it's true that the tax year in the US and in Spain it's the same. Okay, it's a natural year, but it's true that it's completely different from the UK. In Spain, it's a natural, so from January to December. One important thing which happens in Spain, and this is completely different, I think, from the two countries, it's that in Spain you are a tax resident or non-tax resident for the whole year. Okay, we cannot split the tax residency, which means that you will pay taxes for the whole year in one or the other. The rules, of course, are completely different as a tax resident than as non-tax resident. In order to be considered tax resident in Spain, we have three different criteria. Of course, the most famous one is the 183-day rule, which means that if you have spent in Spain more than 6 months, it could be continuously or not, you will be not automatically, but you would be considered a Spanish tax resident. Okay, so as a Spanish tax resident, you have to pay taxes for the worldwide income. These we have two additional rules, which is you have in Spain also your center of economic and vital interest, which means that you have your main income and assets and also the family. And the last one, and this is usually the most unknown, it's if you have in Spain your family, you have a presumption that you will be also considered tax resident unless you can prove that you are tax resident in a third country. With that, what is important, it's that as a Spanish tax resident, you pay taxes for the worldwide income, no matter if you maintain your tax residency or not in the UK or in the US. It's true that if you maintain it, we have, of course, a dual taxation agreement where we can see, like with the rules of the agreement, which is the country that will win this tax residency. But the thing is, in principle, if you move to Spain in order to, as my colleague Monica says, to live here, I don't know, but for example, for 3 or 4 years, when you surpass these 6 months, you will be considered tax resident and you have to pay taxes for the worldwide income, which include, of course, all the Spanish income, but also the pension income, also, for example, rental income for foreign properties, and also, for example, capital gains from the sale of any assets. Regarding selling your primary residence, it's true that according to the double taxation agreement, Spain has the right to tax the capital gain derived from this sale of this primary home, but it's true that we have an exemption it is if you reinvest in a new home which is located in Spanish territory. You have, of course, to meet some requirements, like you need to invest the full amount you receive from the sale, and at the same time you need to do it during a certain period. So it's true that we are making some of these tax plannings in advance in order all of our clients have all the information before and make the planning about selling the house, buying another one if they need it. And I think which is also important, for example, it's also if you want to sell it, but I don't know, but it's usually one of the typical questions that we have of our clients, like, hey, I want to sell, but I don't know where I want to live in Spain. I prefer to be on the first years, for example, in a rental apartment. So what I can do with my home. And here, of course, the recommendation is, okay, sell it during the time you will be considered non-tax resident in Spain. So, for example, if you move on July, and you will be not exceeding the 6 months threshold in Spain, you have until December to sell it, because even you are in Spain, you will be considered non-tax residents, which means you will not be paying taxes for the income you receive from abroad. This is really important. I think this is one of the most concerns I think a lot of clients have. I think that the other one is also, I think most, for example, in the US, as a lot of people who is US citizens will pay in taxes, I would say forever in the US. Usually they are concerned about, okay, what happened with Spain? I am paying taxes twice or not. It's true that here we have a dual taxation agreement signed between these two countries and a lot of more countries. But I think the most important is in this treaty, okay, we have the rules to split the payments, okay, or the taxes to be paid. In these treaties, they usually said who is the country who has the right to tax. In the case both countries has the right to tax, we can apply the tax credit, which means deduct the taxes already paid in the US in the Spanish tax return, and vice versa. So if you are paying taxes in Spain, you can also decide to deduct these taxes in the US tax return. The reason why I think it's really important to make the tax planning in advance, it's because it's important to see where you have to pay the taxes, which country has the right to do it, and in case both of them, usually decide which one is the most tax beneficial to make this tax credit. Because in the US, you have to pay for everything, but it's that usually the tax rates, I would say the percentage, are lower than in Spain. So here it's true that make this tax planning is also beneficial in a lot of cases in advance. At the same time, on additional like in Spain, sorry, we pay taxes on an annual basis. Okay, so for a Spanish tax resident, you have to submit a tax return on the next year. Usually, it's the same tax season in the US from April to June, but we don't have an extension. The important thing here is you pay taxes on once in a year. And we also have additional, I would say, tax obligations. One of them is the Modelo 720, which is the foreign asset declaration, where you do not have to pay any taxes, but you have to declare everything that you have abroad if in 3 blocks are exceeding more than 50,000 euros. Sorry. These blocks are the bank accounts, the investments, and properties. It's just an informative form, but it's true that you have to, I would say, declare a lot of information for the moment, but it's just informative. And I would say, just to finish, in Spain, we also have the wealth tax, because it is not neither common in the US, in the UK. And as I told you before, depend on the region, this wealth tax, it would be more or less tax efficient. So it's really important also to see where you want to locate, because depend on all the assets you have in Spain or abroad, you will have a threshold or another. Just to put you an example, in Catalonia, the threshold is 500,000 euros. In Valencia is 1 million. And in Andalusia and Madrid is 3.7 million. So, like the difference is huge for the moment. And it seems like it will maintain for that in a long time. So it's really important to do it in advance, because even you want maybe a place, if it's not tax beneficial, you maybe want to look for another one in advance, and not when you already buy the house, establish your family, schooling, and everything. I think I'm not missing anything, but of course, Remy, tell me.
I think my brain is going a million miles an hour on how I can jump in and ask some questions. But yeah, look, that was a really, really, really good overview in such a short period of time. And I think you really gave the importance of not only just arriving in Spain and having to declare and report your tax. Obviously, you guys help with that and assist with clients on that on a daily basis. But the pre-planning aspect is significantly important, right? Yeah, and touching on the regions is also important. If you understand what region you want to move to, speaking with you guys, I think is really important to understand that. I think just to double over, I guess, on the tax year, because I think from experience, that's the one that sort of perhaps catches people off guard, or people are not really sure about. And to give examples, we're in October now, moving towards the end of the year, talking about UK expats, for example. If you sell your house and the completion date turns up or ends up being in January, February in 2026, if you then move straight to Spain, you'll be deemed a tax resident in Spain for 2026. So the advice generally is to spend less than 183 days, move after July. That all forms part of that pre-planning, because Spain will the hacienda will you'll essentially be liable for the capital gains on that UK property sale. So these are all things to have conversations around, to make sure the timing is correct, to understand what region you're going to. Maria, I kind of want to have a chat with you about my taxes after that, but I think I've been here a while, so it does really show the importance of having that pre-planning. And look, there's no cost initially having that conversation with Maria to ensure that you're set up and doing everything correctly. And that forms part of myself and Jacob's conversation, is to understand what assets you have in place, what your plans are moving forward, what the timelines look like. We work alongside the Lexity to really ensure people are set up in the best way possible. Obviously, we're getting quite a lot of inquiries about the potential move. As far as pensions, UK state pension, there's a double taxation agreement in place there. So you're not going to pay tax twice, as Maria said. You can continue taking that. And generally, we recommend making the contributions to get that full if you're in a position to do so. As far as taking money from pensions, now very important, along with that tax timeline and ensuring you are taking tax-free lump sums from pensions as a UK tax resident and not a Spanish tax resident. So, generally speaking, the age of 55, probably moving up to 57, you have the eligibility to take a 25% tax-free lump sum. Do that as a UK tax resident. If you do it in Spain, it's not tax-free in Spain. You will be taxed at your marginal rates. It's a bit important one to look at. Currency, again, I'll touch on that later. As far as the timing, people are moving to Spain, they're going to live in Euroland, they want euro producing income. That's exactly what me and Jacob specialize on a day-to-day basis, looking at how we can transition sterling or dollars into euro generating income, producing vehicles, savings, investments. That forms part of our recommendation and advice. The options, I guess, as far as UK pensions, gone are the days of cure-ups, which it mentions there, and overseas transfers to the likes of Malta and Gibraltar. There's a 25% overseas tax charge now. So the advice, majority of the time, is to leave them within the UK, but utilize international SIP offerings. And there's plenty of different options available in that space. But essentially, the benefits of that allows you to have access to ongoing financial advice once you leave the UK. And if you have existing advisors in place, similar to the US, under their regulations, they can't advise you once you move to Europe. If you want and require ongoing advice and assistance with pensions, that's where we come in. You want a bit of currency flexibility. The international SIP offerings all offer various different holdings, and you can transition money into euros, take from the pension pots in euros, and generally a bit more flexibility and control over the pensions. But that's all subject to conversation. What we do as a pension sort of transfer team would be to look at existing pension holdings, see what the benefits are of those pensions, see what options you have potentially available with your providers. And all we're doing is look at a comparison. If you move it here, this would be the benefits of doing so. This would be the deduction in cost. This would give you the flexibility, and so on and so on. It's just a simple conversation to see what can be done with them. At the end of the day, we spend most of our time looking at, especially for UK expats, where can we draw money from in the most tax efficient way? And a lot of people will say, I'll sell my house in the UK for X amount and buy in Spain. Generally, that purchase is going to be cheaper, so you're going to be left with a bit of savings. And clients will say, I'm just going to take my pensions for the rest of my life. But if we can take money from a Spanish tax compliant savings vehicle, the tax saving is going to be significantly larger. So again, brings me nicely on to what to do with existing savings or ISAs or investments in the UK. Premium bonds even, for example, these are great as a UK tax resident. They hold no benefit or no tax breaks for being a Spanish tax resident. So like Maria was touching on, as far as the pre-planning aspect, that's very important. If you're planning to move to Spain in January and you have ISA accounts, premium bonds, investments, onshore, offshore portfolio bonds in the UK, you're going to want to have a conversation to see what can be done. And we're not here to sell you anything or, commit you or have obligation to take our advice. We're here just to give you recommendations and information. Like Maria and Monica, we don't charge for initial consultations. We're here to understand your situation, how you have your assets arranged, and what it looks like for life in Spain, to give you advice and options available for alternatives to ISAs. A lot of what I do on a daily basis for clients in France and Spain is looking at alternatives to ISAs. And that may sound pretty simple, but it's looking at Spanish tax compliant savings vehicle and tax efficiency when drawing income, tax efficiency from a reporting point of view. These are all form part of our advice, and they're all client specific. So we urge you to get in touch with us for a free consultation to see what we can do. The scope of advice we can give is really significant, but we're happy to see if we can help. Spanish tax compliant bonds generally are the best alternative to, again, talking about UK expats, best alternative to ISAs and onshore investments in the UK. And these essentially are tax efficient wrappers like you have an ISA in the UK. And again, there's a wide range of options available in this space, and that all comes down to specific objectives, age, situation, income requirements, risk tolerance. And after those sort of conversations, we'll go into the marketplace, the freedom of market we have, and find a vehicle or instrument that's best suitable for you. Again, there's no cost in these consultations. There's no cost in us preparing any advice. There's certainly no commitment, certainly no obligation. We're here to help. We're qualified financial advisors that are licensed and regulated to give advice. A lot of people want income generating vehicles in euros. We can look at a transition from sterling to euros, or even keep funds in sterling and take from them in euros. Again, forms part of our sort of overall advice. But there's significant benefits in Spanish tax compliant bonds, mainly from a income perspective. You're only taxed on the gain element. Again, I can run through figures and charts and so on, but I can send more information as per people's requests. And also from a succession point of view, structuring your wealth correctly, ensuring that there's no forced Spanish heirship rules and so on and so on. So it all comes down to specific objectives and requirements as per clients' needs and objectives. A lovely graph on capital gains in Spain. We're not here to scare you off and worry you from a tax perspective. We're here to assist and help you ensure that you're not liable for capital gains on a UK property sale that you sold in January and moved in February. We're here to make sure that you mitigate that tax and time the move to Spain correctly. Similarly with a pension lump sum, for example, or pension income. Going back to the difference in taking income and what the purpose of our financial planning meetings are is to say, if you want to continue taking money from that UK pension, you'll be taxed at, let's say, 23%, compared to if you established a Spanish tax compliant bond with the proceeds of a UK house or with the proceeds from an ISA and set up an income, your tax is going to be negligible, looking at 1-2% in the early years. The difference is substantial, and we can run tax simulations to give you an idea of what that looks like. Again, not to scare you as far as the rates and the tax in Spain. That's exactly why we're here. That's exactly what Maria is here for as far as planning and reporting. These are some of the many benefits of a Spanish wrapper versus a UK wrapper. If you keep your UK investments and ISAs in the UK, and then in 2 years' time say, I want to buy a new car, a Porsche, a swimming pool, I'm going to take some money, you're just going to be taxed at those nominal rates. Compared to if you transition that money into a Spanish tax compliant wrapper, again, you're only taxed on the gain element, which is very important. And I can share some examples of that. But the difference is really significant. So, again, moving back to that timeline and the tax residency point of view, if you are planning to move to Spain next year, which is probably likely why you've joined the call, generally speaking, if you haven't sold the main residence, then you want to move to the latter part of next year, mid-end of the year, as far as a move. That then gives you until the 31st of December 2026 to liquidate UK ISAs, to take tax-free lump sums, to sell your UK property. These are all very important steps, because if you do that in 2027, Spain are going to tax you on your worldwide income. You won't have to do a tax return until 2028, as Maria said. So you'll become a full Spanish tax resident in 2027. whatever liquidization, whatever transfer of assets happens in 2026, I'm getting confused myself, is not taxable in Spain. So as I said, forms part of our advice and part of our sort of planning. Similarly with Maria, get in touch. You need clarification on this, and we're here to help you where to take money from, how to support your lifestyle in Spain, and generally what to do with liquid savings and assets.
So Maria, with some of the pre-planning that she was just talking about, right? This can be incredibly important, yes, with selling the house, but also in the US, you can see immediately that our bans for our capital gains tax are much different. And so as far as planning, if you're thinking about a move in 2026, now is a great time to take some of these capital gains that are going to be taxed at a higher rate, particularly if you have lower income this year. If you've already retired this year, you're lower income, there might be some capital gains tax on that long-term capital gains that you're taxed at 0%. Where if you wait, you can see what the consequence is here. Even at 15%, up to some pretty substantial amounts for a married couple. And so really good to get some of that planning done before making the move and for being a tax resident, if that's going to be true for you in 2026. As far as interacting with us, right, we customize different financial plans. And so we're not just throwing the same advice at everyone. We really want to know where you're at in relation to retirement. Are you recently retired? Have you been retired for a long time? Are you planning at 5, 10, 20 years? And then what's your comfortability with some of these risk tolerances, right? Are you okay if your portfolio goes down 5, 10% in a year, if it's really going to be looking for long-term gains? Or are you 5 years into retirement and you're seeing some of these dips and being really nervous? And do we need to be a little bit more conservative for you? And focused on income and preservation of wealth as opposed to growing that. And so we look at all of these options, right? And on a global perspective to be able to provide the most value to our clients.
I just want to touch quickly on, you mentioned Spanish compliant bonds not being suitable for US. Lucky UK expats and Europeans that you have access to those because they're great. I'll touch on currency very quickly here. So currency is obviously a big one when we are talking about moving to Spain. You are likely moving from the UK or the US. Obviously different currencies. You are selling assets, selling houses, liquidizing whatever you are doing, and likely buying a house in Spain. There's a significant, generally speaking, currency transaction involved in that. And by all means, go ahead and do it yourself. You know, even being in the industry for so many years and looking at currency trading and understanding markets, I never feel comfortable doing large transactions myself, and I'd always want a currency company involved. So without being scared off by a currency company, generally they're free accounts, and like a bank, they only make profit on their margins. So very, 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 very strong rates, and essentially you get a free account, you get a free account manager. My mother just moved over to Spain a year and a half ago or so, and she bought a house, and there was a transition of funds. She got appointed account manager who dealt with the transaction. So there's a deposit to pay, a holding fee, a deposit, the remainder of the funds. It takes a long time. So if you're able to lock in forward contracts or just speak to someone about the transition of funds, it's more than important. So we work with one of the largest currency firms, you know, within Europe. It's Smart Currency. We'd recommend speaking to someone like that just to deal with those large transactions. Your day-to-day stuff, by all means, set up a TransferWise and Revolut account. They're very, very simple, but it's just important because of the fluctuations we've seen this year. Is getting someone, an expert trader, to be involved in that transaction. Jacob, any points on currency?
Yes. Again, I hate to harp on interest rates, but they're going down in the US, in the UK, and that's just going to hurt both of those currencies' valuation and exchange rates against the euro, even though they've already taken a dip this year. US dollar 15% against the euro, and really getting worse by the day. So It makes sense to speak with these currency providers. They can set up forward contracts and lock in exchange rates well in advance. So maybe you're not necessarily ready to buy the house right now, but if you're going to buy a house in the next 6 months and your currency is in another currency than what you're buying the house in, it's going to be important. You don't want that house to be another 15% more expensive because you didn't make some of these moves today.
So what should I do? Guys, this is I guess a free invitation to speak with us individually. Obviously, these webinars are pretty broad, and we're trying to give as much information as we can in a short period of time to give you, simply things to be mindful of on that transition, especially around timing, especially around visas, especially around financial planning. But we're all open to have individual conversations on a one-to-one basis or 1-to-2 to see if we can help. And look, speak to Monica around what visas may be suitable for you. Speak to Maria around potential tax planning. Here's some links to our diaries. I'll follow up with an email with a link to Mexity as an inquiry form. It's pretty straightforward. You can just fill out that as simply as you can, and you'll be directed to the right person. These are QR codes for myself and Jacob's diary. Some people sometimes get these the wrong way around. So if you are a US expat, it's Jacob's diary. If you are UK or perhaps anywhere in Europe or rest of the world, get your phones out, take a picture. It will send you directly to our Calendly booking sites, and it should give you the next 3 months of bookings. If it gave you the next 6 months, perhaps, Jacob, we have to block out a bit of time in March. We're due babies on the same day. Not myself and Jacob, our partners, but March the 13th is the lucky date. So maybe we might be out of the office for a week or two around then. But look, guys, the be all and end all, we're happy to have conversations. And as I keep going on about, there's no commitment, there's no cost, there's no obligation to take any of our advice. I recommend personally from experience and from clients to use Lexity as far as the visas, tax planning and tax reporting, and the renewals. They'll hold your hand on the whole process. It can be a minefield. Use the experts, use people who are very reputable in the business. I can sit here and recommend Jacob, but he works in the same company, and look, he's good at what he does. So we are open to conversations, and then all it is a starting point to see if we can help. And if we can help, and if we are in position to from a financial advice point of view, we'll prepare and send a financial report and recommendation via email, and we'll run through everything step by step. There's no cost obligation, just to reiterate that point. I think I answered a couple of questions, I guess, as we went throughout. I had a couple pre-webinar on moving funds outside of the US. I think people, like you mentioned, Jacob, are quite nervous and scared. That generally comes down to individual requirements and objectives. I understand that, but what have you seen from experience? People want income generating funds in Spain and Europe in euros.
Yeah, they really, well, they want to get away from the US, and I think there's some fears between a lot of my clients of some sort of capital controls, similar to what happened in Venezuela, what's currently happening in South Africa, and what's been going on for quite some time in China. I mean, that's where there's a limit of the amount of money that you can actually move abroad. And so, I think that's certainly one component. And the other component, right, is people wanting diversification away from the dollar, as they might have had a US dollar based fund that went 25% this year. But if you had euros sitting in a bank making 0%, right, you're only really up 10% in that circumstance. So it's, if you get some of these same gains on the euro side, it can be much more attractive. Now 25%, right, is a crazy return. Not many accounts getting that this year, particularly over the last couple of weeks. But we can certainly look at some fixed return euro options that are kicking out 10% a year, on a pretty easy basis, that aren't even going to be related to the market to be able to have those ups and downs. So I think that's just of interest to a lot of people who, I think some of those same people are moving to Spain, because of the Trump administration. And so those, those are some of the same fears that are involved with that.
We're seeing a lot of really attractive rates, especially coming out of the UK. I know you deal with a lot of clients, and we're looking at sort of alternatives to cash deposits and just ways to generate a return. But UK corporate bonds are offering, like you said, 8 to 10, 12% on short-term 2-3 year bonds. And these are available in sterling, euros, dollars. So they can be quite attractive, especially pre-move if you plan to move in a couple of years and you know you're going to liquidate investments or ISAs anyway, just to generate a return. Or, like Jacob said, if you're in Europe and you want to generate a euro income, absolutely. We've got a question here on Beckham's Law. How do you apply? And I guess Lexity, can you assist with that process?
Yeah, sure. We're assisting with application, but also with the prior tax planning, because I would say more than the 50% of the cases that we have, they are not 100% eligible at the beginning. So we are also assisting on this kind of tax advice. And we are working closely with Monica also with all these cases, because most of them came from immigration. And then we detect that they want the backup, if they are eligible or not. It's also important the work permit that they are issuing. So yes, we are sitting with that. And I would say lots of our clients, except the retired people, but lots of them are really interested in this Beckham regime because it's really tax advantages.
Okay, I think we get a lot of inquiries. Beckham Law sounds good, but having eligibility is a different thing. Maria, one for you as far as tax reporting, and I'll try and sum it up in a couple of questions on tax. When in Spain, I think you mentioned it earlier, and from experience I know, but what's the sort of process you deal with clients' accounts? Once someone's an expat in Spain, you then do their reports on a quarterly, annual basis?
For Spanish tax residents, right, Remy?
Yes, correct.
No, for Spanish tax residents, we have different tax seasons. For example, the first, I would say, tax obligation, it's this informative form of assets and rights located outside of Spain, which deadline is March 30 of the next year of the residence. So if we're talking about 25, usually we are contact begin February of all the people who are interested in assistance regarding tax obligations with this informative form. Then the tax campaign for personal annual income tax return start on April. And we also have the list, usually the immigration clients, also prior clients from taxes. Then if they are interested, we are also sending them I would say, the introductory email with our parallel platform to complete the tax questionnaire in order to get all the information and start the process recapping for the income tax preparation. And usually this is annually. All of the,
Yeah.
I would say, obligations for Spanish tax residents, and for the wealth is the same, and the deadline is the same than the personal income tax return.
And what about autonomo or setting up SLs? Do you deal with people's onboarding on that when they move to Spain?
Yeah, for autonomous, it's true that the obligations are ongoing, so they have to pay usually monthly Social Security payments and quarterly withholding taxes on the invoices issued. So it's true that this, even like all the other annual income tax return that they have to complete, they also have this recurring one. And for the SL and all the corporate, I would say, companies in Spain, yes, they will also have, depend on the turnover, or monthly or quarterly obligations.
Okay. I think, guys, there's a few questions that I'll get back to individually, but the moral of the story here is to take us up on these offers, because we're happy to have conversations to see if we can help. Get in touch with Monica and Maria regarding immigration, regarding tax, myself or Jacob if you want some help financial planning. We're here to help. And as I said, and I'll say it one last time, no cost in a conversation, no commitment, no obligation. We'll be touching base again in the new year as far as a bit of an update. But yeah, we look forward to hearing from all of you, and thanks for all your time.